YouTube, what's going on? HeirofCarthage here, and got a fun replay today that was sent in by Consul of Rome, who is kind enough to send replays to me every now and then. I myself have not really gotten a chance to play any multiplayer in this new patch. I will be starting that this Thursday at 8 p.m. US Central on a stream. You can join me, and we'll be jumping in and starting to play some multiplayer so that I can get even more replays. If you have replays that you want me to check out, you can either send them to airtotalwar@gmail.com, or you can go on my Discord server, and we have a Warhammer 2 replays area, and we have replay areas for other games as well. Now, this matchup with Consul Rome is going to be against the Vampire Counts. So, a couple of Game 1 factions now late into the life cycle of the Warhammer franchise in Total War now. And interesting to see how these match up. Now, I want to cover a few things. I'm going to kind of slow the action down for just a second here because there is an engagement taking place early on. Obviously, the Vampire Counts are a rush faction, and they need to get very clean engagements where they can get them. And speaking of, early on here, the Vampire Counts were able to use some Vanguard deployed Dire Pack and Dire Wolves to catch a Knights of the Blazing Sun unit. They then threw in Vargeist, which remember nowadays, Vargeist have armor-piercing value as well. And then on top of the Vargeist, they threw in their Strigoi Vampire Lord. So at this point, the Empire is going to lose a Knights of the Blazing Sun, and there is very little the Empire can do about it. Now let's go over the rest of the Empire build. They do have a Bright Wizard with Burning Head and Fireball. Good tools to use against the Vampire Counts, since they have many units that suffer a weakness to fire damage because of regeneration. And the Empire's Infantry is going to be made up of Flagellants and Spearmen. The Spearmen because they're cheap and they have a bonus versus large, and the Flagellants because they are unbreakable. So they're a Fireball getting in and killing off a Vargeist model and causing some extra damage. Obviously that Bright Wizard is going to be a target for the Vampire Counts. Now as for the rest of the Empire army, again I'm going to slow it down for just a minute because we have some action that's about to take place here. We have the Silver Bullets Handgunners, which is a longer range AP damage missile, which is, you'll notice the placement here is right in the middle of the Empire formation, but with a little bit of room given to it by other units. And the idea is that it can kind of exercise a zone of control and try and threaten Vampire Counts units that move into that zone of control. And I like the units that he has flanking it. In the back, we've got a Spear unit that can support it directly, and on the flanks we have Free Company Militia units here and here. And Free Company Militia are an often overlooked unit, I think, in the Empire versus Vampire Counts arsenal. They are basically a swordsman unit with pistols. Not exactly the same, but pretty darn close. And that makes them particularly useful because they're not exactly weak to zombies and skeletons, right? They actually do decent against those units in melee. And it makes them a little more formidable and a little more challenging for the Vampire Counts to entirely suppress. Now, as for the rest of the army here, there are a couple more units I think that are worthy of note. A couple of them are out here. This is going to be the Royal Altdorf Griffites and Karl Franz. Karl Franz does have the Reichland Runefang, and he's got Galmaraz, which gives him extra damage and bonus versus large. And back here was a Feasters of the Dusk, which is a Vanguard deployed Crypt Ghoul who actually got spotted by Karl and the Griffites. It's possible that the vampires did not see this, and hence they got it sprung on them there. So let's cover the Vampire Counts army. The Strigoi Ghoul King, I think a couple of important things to note for the Ghoul King. You get 2 breath attacks off the Terrorgeist. They're not as devastating as they are from a dragon, but still useful. There is this Ghoul King of Usharan, which is an ability that is going to grant a lot of hit point regeneration, and so basically allows Ghoul King to recover, the Strigoi Vampire Lord to recover from a great deal of damage, and so it makes him pretty flexible. Plus the Opal Amulet, which will provide some critical damage resistance in a key situation. Look at this Fireball hit over here, knocking out 2 more Vargeist models, so that Bright Wizard making his presence felt. And as far as the rest of the Vampire Count army, really just Crypt Ghoul infantry, which I like. It's fairly quick, it poisons, and it's going to be good against the Empire infantry for the most part. However, the pick of the Flagellants that I mentioned earlier, I really like, and we'll discuss why here in a moment. There is a Necromancer supporting, which can help pull in extra magic and help buff leadership. And of course, you can see there is a summon and a invocation to heck here for some healing. But this unit is mostly here to help summon an extra winds of magic, and you can see it there. with the Forbidden Rod that can be used, but also to support leadership. Other than that, it's Vargeist and Bats and Direwolf. So this vampire army is built around speed with the Crypt Ghouls and then the aerial and ground-based fast-moving units. So definitely intended to be a more speedy vampire count army. And you can see that if you look at the radar map over here, the vampire counts are working on a surround strategy and basically a isolate and destroy strategy. So they're surrounding the Empire army and keeping all facets of it busy. You can see some of the units are going to have to come up the middle and engage. They're going to be supported by dive bombing from different Vargeist, and I forgot to mention there are a couple of Cairn Wraiths as well. Cairn Wraiths are pretty dangerous units to the Empire because they can cut through armor, and they're good against these lighter infantry units as long as they stay out of magic damage. They're pretty effective. You can see there was one of them on each flank, but again, that adds to the speed. Cairn Wraiths are a pretty fast unit for being on the ground. Now you can see over here that the Vampires were hoping to get a quick knockout on the Altdorf Griffites. They had used a Spirit Leech on it previously, but now Franz is in here supporting the units, and the Vampires end up in a little bit of a slug out that they don't want to be in. The Vampires are going to want quick victories, kind of like this here, where they got in quickly to this Free Company militia, shut it down, and routed it. Quick victories, though, will be denied by the Flagellants, and that's why I particularly like the pick of the Flagellants in this matchup. It stops the vampire counts from being able to get a complete chain rout, because Flagellants do not rout, they fight to the death. They're a bit weak when it comes to certain types of fights, but they provide that backbone that the Empire really needs sometimes to stand up to these fast-moving, terror-inducing armies like that the vampire counts can field. It makes this a very classic matchup, in my opinion. The Empire is basically has all the tools, but isn't great at some, say like heavy infantry, but basically has about every tool that a player could want in their arsenal. Whereas the vampire counts lack multiple tools, but have very good tools in certain departments, and you know, they have to make use of them. Both factions, I think, have some pretty powerful magic, and we've seen that at play here. As the Necromancer, we can hear summons going off right now. Actually, I think the Ghoul, the Vampire Lord, Strigoi Lord, sorry, was the one that summoned these Crypt Ghouls. That is an ability that that Vampire Lord has. Very close fight right now, a very close fight. Look at this, though. The Silver Bullets routed. It looks like they're being chased by a Direwolf unit, but the Direwolf is crumbling, so it won't likely be able to finish them. There is a Dire Pack out here as well, and there were some Fell Bats that went all the way to the line, chasing those Knights of the Blazing Sun that we saw earlier. So a few Vampire units strung out a little far, but the Strigoi Vampire Lord's doing a very nice job of supporting the battle from the sky here, not getting overcommitted where he'll get killed by Karl Franz, because Karl is going to be pretty tanky. Now, that said, Strigoi Vampire Lord is on a Terrorgeist mount, and that Terrorgeist mount has poison, which is going to slow down Karl's ability to do damage and land hits, and slow him down literally with speed. But you can see when he gets in here, Karl's going to do some major damage. On the flip side of that, the Strigoi Vampire Lord being on that Terrorgeist is going to cause very nice AP and anti-large, versus Karl does not have anti-large. The Strigoi Vampire Lord will heal, whereas Karl can get no such healing in this match. But again, look where Karl does get in, starts to land hits. I mean, he is absolutely clobbering this Necromancer, and he's got the support of this Warrior Priest here. And combine that with the Flagellants, and it's going to make it a little bit difficult for the Vampires to get a quick rout of any sort. So instead, you can see the Vampire Lord here changing its attention over to the Bright Wizard, which is a smart move. This Bright Wizard can cause a lot of damage, and right now is relatively unsupported, with these bats headed back in. By the way, just a quick little story over here. The Silver Bullets did come back from routing. They did not get killed by the Direwolves, but the bat did swing back in and get them before Consul of Rome was able to bring them back closer. And now the bats and the Terrorgeist have their eye on this Bright Wizard. They want him dead. Perhaps they wish to raise him from the dead. Can you get like a Bright Wizard zombie that can cast spells? Because that'd be pretty sweet if you're a Vampire Counts player. Just kind of let you all see this close up here. I'll move that little marker off screen. But yeah, the Bright Wizard is running for his life. He did use these few Flagellants to buy some time, and got one more burning head off here, which annihilated what was left of a Cairn Wraith in that fight. So that was a good call. And now you're down to just a few Crypt Ghouls and some bats here if you are the vampire counts. Another fireball to the face for the Strigoi Vampire Lord. All that damage could add up and could be a deciding factor in what is a very, very close battle right now. Very close indeed. The Empire does look like they're going to have the strength to finish off an infantry fight. They've got all this leadership on the ground. The vampires are going to be having to resort to charging in from the air, and the Strigoi hopefully getting cycle charges in. And you can see that is indeed what he's up to. Trying to get some damage in on Carl, but not stick around in this fight for too long. Still has the Fell Bats, which will help a considerable amount here if they dive in, as needed to help provide an escape route for the Strigoi Vampire Lord as it continues to heal and use one of its best features, which is its charge bonus here, which is pretty nice at 45. It's nothing stellar, but I mean, it's pretty darn good. Comes that breath attack here, trying to do whatever damage the Strigoi Vampire Lord can. And again, on these charges, it's going to be effective. Plus, there's a Spirit Leech here. Remember, Franz can't heal. So the Vampire's still very much in this game, despite it being such a close battle. And see how much difference the Flagellants made? There's only a few of them, but they stayed in this fight a very long time. The Tattersouls have almost 190 kills, so they have been very effective at helping take away some of the Vampire Count's infantry. There are some spearmen back here for the Empire that are badly needed to get back into this fight. I'm not sure if they have a movement order. They do not. And then there's also a Free Company militia back here that the Empire badly needs. There's more units regrouping. We see a fireball coming in, and the Vampire Lord taking another hit. There's another Free Company militia. This one is coming back into the fight. We're going to see the bombardment here from the Warrior Priest, who's going to do a nice job of supporting this fight. And we're almost at the healing cap here for the Strigoi Vampire Lord, so now it starts to get pretty dangerous, but for the fact that the Vampire Lord has done tremendous damage to Karl Franz, and the loss of Karl Franz right here would be probably unbearable for the Empire forces considering the power bar. Sure enough, he routs, and you're not even going to see a follow here by the Strigoi Lord. He goes straight in for the Bright Wizard. He is looking to gut the morale of the Empire army, and it succeeds. Everything else just takes off running, watching the leadership rout, and that shattered Karl as well. And the Vampires are going to pull off a rather nice victory to a very close fight here. So kudos to Consul of Rome and his opponent here. Quite a battle indeed, and I really like this one. I think it illustrated some high points for both factions, and I like the back and forth play that both factions had here. The Empire bringing those unbreakable flagellants. You can see them still here holding up the battle. They did their job. They held the battle up for a very long time, and Vampire Counts aren't going to like getting caught in a fight over a really long run. You can see how much it wore the Vampires out, right? Their chaff starts to fall apart. Really, just in the end, it was the hit point healing and the clutch here of the Strigoi Vampire Lord that really carried the day for them, because the Empire did drag out all those fights. They got rid of all their other units and left the leadership on its own. Unfortunately for Consul of Rome, though, he just didn't have quite enough to finish off that leadership. Poor Flagellant getting ripped to pieces there. And here is the last standing survivor of the Empire army. I guess except for Franz, he ran away. And as he is disemboweled, that is going to be the end of this one. Let's go check out the stats on this one. So as I said, good game to Bop and Consul of Rome. Appreciate Consul of Rome sending this in. It's always fun when players are able to send in battles where they lose, but it's not like a boring fight, you know what I mean? And for me, that's like, some people be like, how come you don't show, the player losing more? Well, you have to have the right battle where I think it's interesting to see a fight you lost, and this is one of those. It was close. I thought there was things done well by both sides here. In fact, it was very close. If you look at it, I mean, there was not a lot of troops left at the end of this one. Let's take a look at some of the damage dealt and values here. Karl Franz pulling in a pretty solid performance for the Empire. Now, these Warrior Priests don't cost a lot, and this is a pretty good value that he had out of them. Really, it was the terror rout and the army losses that got this Warrior Priest in the end, because he was doing very well for the money. And look at this, a Bright Wizard at much less cost, proving almost as valuable as Karl Franz here. So that is why you saw the Vampire Lord trying so aggressively to get rid of the Bright Wizard. The Bright Wizard caused an insane amount of damage, and don't underestimate what wizards can do to you. The Tattersouls also coming in with a pretty solid performance here, And again, these Free Company Militia are like 400 something cost, so this one almost doubled its value. This one did not, but between the two, it averaged out okay. The silver bullets were contained very nicely by the vampire counts here, which is a good thing for the vampire counts. If you don't contain the silver bullets as a rush faction, then you should expect to die under pretty much any circumstances. The Altdorf Griffites were also very well contained by the vampire counts. They got bogged down in a fight that wasn't really great, a lot of spirit leeching, and it really kept those Altdorf Griffites from making their presence felt on the battlefield. And some people might be thinking, like, I wonder why he brought the Altdorf Griffites. That terror doesn't really do anything against the vampires. It does not, but when a unit has terror, it also cannot be terror routed. There is still some benefit, I think, to having the Altdorf Griffites in this fight. Not to mention they're a tier 9 unit, and they just do a little more damage as a whole. Now, the Strigoi Vampire Lord here did a fantastic job for the vampire counts, racking up a staggering 3,552 value and 10,065 damage dealt. The Necromancer didn't do much, but I guess was still supportive in helping pull down some magic. Pretty good value out of the Crypt Ghouls for the most part, not all of them, but a couple of them doing well. And then the Cairn Wraiths, I've always found it a little bit difficult to get value out of Cairn Wraiths. They have to get into just the right fight. And neither one of these really did great for their cost, but they did help the vampires kind of help achieve that encirclement of the Empire forces and move rather quickly. They can be pretty clutch when they're supporting against armored cavalry fights, as that's going to be their best use, in my opinion, is when they start trying to chop through armor. Vargeist did a nice job, dime bombing, staying after moving targets, helping clean up some cavalry early. So not going to see a ton of value off of them, but they still, again, I think did what they needed to do. Same thing with the Bats and the Dire Wolves. These fast-moving units are necessary to help clean up skirmishers, routing units, all that kind of stuff. So regardless of whether you see a ton of value on them on this exit screen, they're usually still pretty valuable. In any case, hope you all enjoyed this one. Again, thank you to Consul of Rome for submitting it. And as I mentioned earlier, if you would like to submit a replay to me, go on to my Discord. There's a link in the description for every video I put out there. If you aren't going to share a replay, but you just want to be part of an awesome community, it's part of the Total War gaming and other stuff, just great folks to talk to and hang out, definitely join us. We'd love to have you there. It doesn't cost you anything. We won't pester you. You can turn off notifications on the server so your phone doesn't go crazy or anything else like that. But we'd love to have you there. It's a fantastic community. I can't recommend it enough. I spend a lot of time there too. I feel like it's like a second family sometimes because it's such an awesome crew. Anyway, HeirofCarthage signing out for now. I'll see you all soon with some more action in Total War Warhammer 2.